In a resolute move, Niger's military has declared its intention to prosecute deposed President Mohamed Bazoum for high treason. This bold step comes on the heels of another revelation. Senior Islamic scholars have disclosed that the country's coup leaders are willing to engage in diplomatic discourse to untangle their standoff with West Africa's regional powerhouse. Unveiling this consequential development, a spokesperson for Niger's military conveys the gravity of the charges against Bazoum during a national televised address on Sunday. The accusations of high treason and undermining the internal and external security have further compounded the already complex political landscape. Now, since the tumultuous coup on July 26, Bazoum and his family have been confined to the presidential residence in Niamey, an arrangement that has generated international concern about their well-being. The region's landscape has been dominated by the resounding voices of the Economic Community of West African States, the organization that has emphatically called for Bazoum's reinstatement, wielding the dual levers of punitive economic sanctions and the looming specter of military intervention should civilian rule not be reinstated promptly. So let's have a conversation on the back of this. You're welcome to Village Square Africa. I am Kemini Amano. Joining our gathering today is Peter Okolo. He's an executive vice chairman for PR24 Nigeria. We also have Dr. Piso Nseke, who is an international relations expert in Yaoundé, Cameroon. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us here on the square. I want to start with you, Doc. We've seen how things have developed the past weekend. Apart from the Nigerian Islamic scholars telling us that the junta is willing to submit to some form of dialogue and diplomacy, we also note that shortly after that, the junta had told us that they will be charging Bazoum for high treason. Prior to all of this, the junta had reached out to Guinea and thanked Guinea for its unfailing support. How are you assessing the developments that we have seen over the past few days?
Thank you very much, Kemi. I would say that the situation in Niger is very volatile because as the seconds, the minutes, and the hours elapse, decisions have been taken based on the assessments of the threats, the actors, the interests, the alliances. So the couple of days is going to be very interesting to see how the military junta in Niger threats, because right now there is the threat of the military intervention from ECOWAS, spearheaded obviously by the Nigerian president, the chairman, and also the fact that the sanctions that have been levied against the regime are biting, like the economic sanctions, the fact that it's becoming much more difficult for the average man to continue. So it's going to be very interesting. But as you said, I would always promote and say that dialogue is always the best key. You should always use dialogue, and want to congratulate the Nigerian cleric, Sheikh
Balalau.
Yes, who was able to use his good office to convince the military junta to discuss with ECOWAS. So right now there are a lot of negotiations. We can only speculate on what the outcomes may happen, may come, but yeah, what is obvious is everybody wants a peaceful resolution to this crisis.
Let's put that to the test, shall we? Let's start with dialogue. Prior to Sheikh Balalau and his, his entourage of Islamic cleric going to Niger, we know that ECOWAS had officially sent a few people ahead of him. We also know specifically how the junta treated those people. At that point, they did not want any talks at all. Why do you think that the meeting with the Islamic cleric changed something?
Well, there are two ways of saying it. Either the sanctions have been really making the military junta to change their course of action, or this is just a small screen. They're trying to buy time, the moment for them to maybe prepare with their allies on a possible intervention. But either way, let's just take it from face value that the sanctions and the possible threat of a military intervention has made the military junta to rethink its strategy, and maybe with the position of the other partners and everybody from the international community that has been speaking of, they've been talking about dialogue, peace, negotiation. So I think that maybe it's because of this pressure from the sanctions and maybe from the international partners that has made Niger to the military junta to rethink its course of action.
I see. My understanding is that we have lost the connection to Peter here, so we'll stick with Dr. Nseke for a bit. Dr. Nseke, before we come back to things around dialogue and diplomacy, Peter is back over the connection, so let's hear Peter's thoughts as well on developments that have emerged surrounding, Niger. Peter, thank you so much for joining us again on the program. Peter, what have been your thoughts about how things have panned out so far? Obviously a good move. Are you surprised by anything at all?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
All right. It's a good development that they are ready to dialogue. Of course, that in itself is saying that they want to a way forward. It's on ground, particularly why the clerics have been able to achieve what they achieved. There's a lot of affinity, between the Hausas and, of course, the Nigerians. There's quite a lot of affinity among them, and I'm sure that has helped in ensuring that they were able to listen to him and his team, unlike the initial first team that was sent by our president, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, of course, who was led by the former president, which they didn't even listen to him. So I believe that with this agreement to deal and dialogue is a good way to start, and I'm sure that once that is done, we'll be able to see the way forward and see how things goes.
I see. Doc, I come back to you. Earlier, you made mention of strategy of why the military may be submitting to talks at this point. However, in what appeared to be an official address to citizens of Niger and to the rest of the world, there was no mention of the intention to want to dialogue. Rather, the military goes ahead to criticize ECOWAS for what it describes as the inhumane treatment it's given the people of Niger Republic. It also goes on to tell the world that they are willing to prosecute President Bazoum for high treason. What do you think they're playing at here?
Well, we can look at it from different angles. The way I see it is right now, the military junta, they're doing a marvelous PR work, communicating and liaising with other similar regimes in Mali, Guinea, Burkina Faso, and other countries. So I would say that the military junta, they're taking the military threat from ECOWAS seriously. And the fact that they're talking about the high treason from the ousted President Mohamed Bazoum it's a veiled threat for me. It's a veiled threat to the international community. Like, okay, guys, if you hit us, we can also hit the person you're trying to reinstate. So all of this is not only a veiled threat, it's also a way of saying that they're trying to discredit any possible reinstatement of the ousted president. So you have to look at it from many angles. It's true right now, on one hand, they're thinking of negotiation. On the other hand, too, they are trying to defend themselves. So as any living organism, you know that the goal at the end of the day is to survive and thrive. So that's how I look at the situation.
Peter, I'm going to ask you the same question. What meanings are you drawing from the military's move to announce to the world that they will be charging President Bazoum with high treason, while at the same time they're telling us that they will submit to, while at the same time the Islamic clerics rather are telling us that based on their meetings with the military, they plan to submit to some kind of dialogue with ECOWAS. Can we take them seriously at this point as far as dialogue is concerned?
Well, that for me looks like a double speak. It looks like a double speak. But of course, the reason why they are towing that line, I want to strongly believe, is the fact that they also want to be taken seriously. All right, let you know that they are willing and they have supporters, because we know they already have supporters in Mali, they have supporters in Burkina Faso, and the rest who are also ready to support them if there is an intervention from ECOWAS. And so that also on their part telling ECOWAS, hey guys, we are also ready for you guys, and they will be sure that if you attack us, the first casualty will be the man who wants us to reinstate. So it's a statement of fact, and they are very ready to do that. But I can tell you that is not the right way to go. Negotiation is actually the right way to go. And I know that ECOWAS is pushing for this military intervention, just for them to see, or for the world to see that they are not a toothless good dog, because all of it has happened in other countries like Mali. They are still there; they've not been pushed out. So why do they want to do it here? So if they do it here, they want to establish that fact that we are not a toothless good dog. We want to establish our presence as the regional bloc organizers. Thank you.
I see, Peter, I'll stick with you, but one of the things that confused me about this entire situation is the fact that we know that the military suspended the constitution of the SWAL government, and now they're charging the president with, high treason. Explain for me how they are able to do that when there is no running constitution. Has it crossed your mind?
I think that's where are you charging into? I mean, there's no constitutional framework to do that. So all that can happen, I can tell you, is that a possible assassination when the hits, hits the fan, and that's the only thing that can happen. You do not have a constitutional framework to be able to, charge him to court for treason. So for me, the only option left is to ensure that the guy is taken out once the hit comes from the ECOWAS intervention team.
I see. Doc, let's talk about the impact of this recent announcement by the Junta on what appears to be the standoff between itself and ECOWAS. What are the repercussions here?
So that's a very good question. We have to look at the repercussions not only from the regional perspective, but also from the continental perspective. Let's not forget that this Sahel region has been known as the Coup Belt, because from Mauritania, Guinea, Burkina Faso, Mali, and now Niger, Sudan, we have been seeing coup d'etats. This is a region that is very volatile, and one of the reasons has been the insecurity. So the immediate impact we have to look at it is from a security perspective. We remember what happened in Libya some years back when the ousted leader Muammar Gaddafi was killed, and we saw the repercussions right up to Nigeria with the proliferation of arms and armed Islamists, which led to Boko Haram and other things like that. Or let me say it helped to explode the situation. So I would say that one of the repercussions could be security, in the sense where we have to make sure that the region becomes much more stable, because you have other states around who could become destabilized. I'm talking about Chad, I'm talking about the surrounding countries, and even Nigeria, Cameroon, all of those surrounding countries, Algeria. You could have an effect from maybe refugees. We can have displaced people, refugees. We can have economic impact. But most importantly for me, this is an interesting case of, I would not say a proxy war between the West and the East, but it is obvious that to some extent you have Western influence. I'm talking about the United States. I'm talking about France that have their interest in Niger. And now with Russia through its the Wagner group. So it could go in any direction. So for me, this is also a blow to democracy. This is a time for Africans in a whole to rethink the model of democracy, like what has been offered to the people. Does it really suit the needs? Does it really take care of the needs of the people, human security? So there are many repercussions. As I said, there could be security, economic,
Right.
and political.
Right. Peter, more contextually, I want us to look at what, the announcement of Bazoum's high treason charge could mean for the process that the military is hoping to engage in with ECOWAS. Mind you, ECOWAS has said that you should free this man, and even it's gone as far as say that reinstate him as a democratically elected president of Niger. So what impact could this charge that has come up over the last weekend have on that process with ECOWAS?
Well, there will be a spread of instability. There will be spread of instability, which of course will cause a perception of political instability across and uncertainty across neighboring countries. Neighboring countries, remember that in Nigeria alone, about 7 states have borders with Niger already. And so if this happens, if there is a military invasion by ECOWAS, what we're going to see is that there will be a lot of movement of refugees from Niger into Nigeria. And Nigeria already, in these areas, we're already suffering from a lot of insecurity. And so we already have a lot of humanitarian crisis that is very heavy. And so that will increase. The humanitarian crisis will increase. The level of insecurity will increase. The borders are already very porous, as it were. So it's a lot of work on the part of the military that are already, weakened in terms of the involvement in internal security, because there's a lot of involvement of our military in internal security as it is today. And so with them getting involved again in Niger crisis, you're just going to weaken what we already have. And more insecurity is what you're going to see in Nigeria. And then we just spread the level of instability that will be spread across will be very, very, very enormous. And I can tell you that in itself will lead to concerns among neighboring governments, citizens, and of course there will be potential. It will have a potential to impact investment, all right, and trade across all of our diplomatic relations that we have. So for me, it's something that we need to take and take towards diplomacy.
Well, it was
out of the invasion.
Right. Doc, I want us to back it up on a few of the things that you have mentioned, one of them being the impact it could have on neighbors of Niger. So I want to ask you how people in your country are responding to, the situation in Niger at the moment.
So it's a very interesting question. And you know that Cameroon, as I'm talking about the French side, as former colony of France, you have a lot of people that are antipathic towards France. You have some people that believe that France has not done a good job in like French West Africa or French Central Africa. So you have some people who welcome this coup d'etat. You have some people who see it as some form of Pan-Africanism or neo-sovereignty. But you have also people that believe that what is happening in Niger is a violation of the rule of law for an elected president who was elected about 2 years ago in the majority. So you have some people that believe that that they're against the junta. But the bottom line is, as Peter mentioned, is that most people are very worried about the humanitarian or possible humanitarian repercussions and security or the insecurity that could occur from any conflict or intervention in Niger, because, you know, we have the Lake Chad, so we're kind of neighbors. We're close. So it is obvious that whatever happens in Niger will have a repercussion to Cameroon and neighboring countries from a security perspective, from a humanitarian perspective, and also from a political perspective, in the sense, like, if nothing is done, this could maybe embolden other would-be military juntas who would like to take power by force. So these are the possible repercussions, and this is how the average Cameroonian is seeing things. So it's a bit mixed.
One last thing with you, Doc, and then I'll move on to Peter. You talked about a proxy war for the West. I'm wondering why you're thinking this could be the situation.
Well, we have different theories. I look at it from the fact that after the coup was announced, you had a lot of people, you know, in Niamey, you had a lot of crowds that gathered, and they were chanting hate messages against France. And you also had a lot of people who were holding up the Russian flag. And, you know, the French embassy was attacked, and you had the Russian flag that was planted on it and stuff like that. So there is the belief, and this is the belief, there is the belief that the Russians could exploit this situation, as what has happened in Central African Republic, Mali, Burkina Faso, and enter and undermine the interests of the West, namely the United States and France. So there's a real possibility of a proxy war based on the evidence gathered.
I see. Peter, the military, through the Sheikh Balalau and his team of Islamic clerics, have made clear that they need ECOWAS to listen to its side of the story. The unhappy ECOWAS drew conclusion when it could have opted to listen to its side of the story. Now, I wouldn't want us to go back to that, but what we also see the military do is try to repair its image in the eye of the international public, especially when it tells us about the well-being of embattled president, ousted president Mohamed Bazoum. They say that his health and conditions in detention are good. But they also hit back at ECOWAS and tell ECOWAS about the inhumane treatments they are given to their people. They talk about the fact that aid isn't coming in. They talked about the lack of pharmaceutical and food. They've talked about electricity. Will this work to repair the horrid image that has been painted of the military in Junta? The military junta in Niger?
Well, for me, I think engaging in negotiation between the coup plotters and the ousted government and other stakeholders, is a good resolution, right? Remember that the international community are also watching. So they need to be able to also ensure that they have some level of pity from the international communities. Already, the sanctions that have been given to them is fighting already. Remember that Nigeria had cut off electricity from them. All right, there are other economic sanctions that are beginning to bite. And so for them, it's important that they also sort it out so that the current support that they are getting from the locals, because you can see that there have been protests supporting their action by the locals in the past weeks. And so they also need to be able to sustain that support. If they don't sustain that support and there's a crack, either internally among the military heads or the military hierarchy, if there's an internal crack within the military hierarchy, that is a problem, because that crack can be leveraged on by any other actor, to break them down. So it's important that they leverage on that, leverage on the cooperation that are given from the citizens and supporting their action. And I think that's part of the reasons why you're seeing them wanting to come and launder those images the way they are doing now.
I see. We'll take a break now, but when we come back, we'll talk about, the friendship is trying to build around, the junta, the friendship they're trying to build around with their neighbors, what that network would mean for the process of restoring democratic rule there or not. We'll be right back. This weekend on the continent was characterized by a lot of developments coming out of Niger. Now we know that ousted president, I beg your pardon, of Niger, Mohamed Bazoum, has been charged with high treason. We also know that through the Islamic clerics who visited the junta there, they have signaled that they are looking forward to some dialogue with ECOWAS. What we have been doing on the square today is try and align the two positions of the military and perhaps how ECOWAS should respond. That's where we are going to now. Still with me are Dr. Nseke and Peter Okolo. We've been discussing this the half hour. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your patience with us here on the program today. But I come to you now, Doc. We were talking earlier about the image it is trying to clean up in the eyes of the international public. But Peter makes a solid point about the fact that domestically, it would seem that the junta in Niger do have some support. This weekend, there was another Thanksgiving rally to show support to the junta within the country. We also know that Abdurrahmani Chiani had reached out to Guinea and asked, thanked Guinea for its unfailing support. Listen, what do you think they are trying to do, widening their network of supporters?
Well, thank you. I would just like to add a little nuance before we talk about the alliances. I would like to mention that the military junta's support is strongest in Niamey, the capital, because we shouldn't forget that Bazoum is from the ethnic Arab, the minority ethnic, the Arab group, and these are mostly found in the borderlines. And in the beginning of the coup, after it happened, we had pro-Bazoum protest, people who did not want the military juntas, who were eventually chased away by the military. But right now, as Peter said, the military junta is trying to gather support, is trying to clean its image as being this messianic group that is coming to fight imperialism from France. Now, concerning the alliances, we know that Niger is trying to follow the model that was done in Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea, and possibly Sudan. And these countries recently, in the past 2-3 years, have known military coups d'etats. So since like 2020, we have had about 7 coups d'etats in just that Sahel region. So it is obvious that Niger is trying to follow the playbook from their neighbors. And today they're asking themselves, well, you didn't say anything in Burkina Faso, you didn't say anything in Guinea, you didn't say anything in Mali, you didn't say anything in Chad, you didn't say anything in Sudan. Why Niger? Why us? Are we like the weak link? So it's obvious like they're trying to gather the support to survive.
I see. Peter, just piggyback off on that question about the alliances is trying to create. How much of a problem could that be for ECOWAS and its interventions in the situation in Niger?
In the alliance, because they are all of the people that they are building the alliance, they're in the same shoes. Now, if ECOWAS succeeds, with taking out the current junta and reinstating the president, the former president, what will happen is that the other juntas in other countries, in Mali, Burkina Faso, and the rest, will be the next. So they are selling that carrot to them to say, you know what? If ECOWAS succeed with us, guess what? You are the next. So that is the thought. That is the thought pattern, and they are beginning to sell that into their head, and that's why you are seeing that alliance is becoming very stronger, and they are ready to support them. They are already building other international alliances to also ensure that they can give ECOWAS a good fight for their money.
I want us to discuss the alliance a little later on as we wind down on our discussions. But Doc, let's take to the fact that the support is mainly in Niamey. We know that the opposition party, the most prominent opposition party in the erstwhile democratic dispensation, had also come out to say that it was looking forward to a return of diplomatic rule. It even wants to work to ensure that President Bazoum is reinstated so that a democratic process, for the continuity of the democratic process in Niger. Now, I want you to analyze this for me, particularly at the time that it is coming into the fray. Is this just for political expediency, or really there is something there when the opposition party tells us that it's only Niamey that is giving support to the junta?
Well, the way I see it, this is all politics in the sense where it is obvious that the opposition party, they were quite happy to see Mohamed Bazoum taken out. But what they would like, obviously, is for the rule of law to return. That means that there will be a very short transitional time and elections will be held in which they can have a real chance of getting in. We know a lot of opposition parties in the belt, the Coup belt or the Sahel region have come to power like that, like a military leader takes over, we remove the ousted, we remove the former president, everybody is happy. Then after that, we call now on the military leaders to relinquish power to civilians. And in that case, usually speaking, it's the opposition party that is usually in a favorable position.
Doc, I guess what I'm asking with that is, does this help at all with, you know, the standoff between ECOWAS and the junta? Does this help the situation in any way? What do you think?
Well, as I said,
okay, go ahead.
Peter wants.
Well, Peter, you take that. You take that. Doc has ceded to you, so go ahead and take that.
Okay, that for me does not in any way add to anything, because what the opposition party is interested in is in a short way, or a shortcut rather, what I would call a shortcut to getting back to power. And I'm strong. I can guarantee you that the opposition are happy. They are happy with what has happened. They believe that if the ECOWAS can come in, that will help them to be able to get a shorter timetable to get back to power. And so but the only way I think that we can quickly get to power is that if ECOWAS can toe the line of dialogue and is able to get them to agree on a very short timetable. Once they can agree on a very short timetable, that way, I think the opposition will be able to get a shot at, getting into government.
Indeed.
Bearing the fact now that there is a serious distrust with the current government that was ousted, so because there's a distrust and then there's so much uproar against them, so opposition has a better chance of winning the next election that will be organized by this junta.
I see. Let's talk about what ECOWAS should do now. The next move on this political chess will and should be made by ECOWAS in the next coming days, maybe even today. But, as analysts, on the outside looking on the inside, Doc, what do you think ECOWAS should be doing, given the last few developments that we have discussed here?
So the first thing is that ECOWAS has to continue its diplomatic push. Trying to negotiate with the military junta to relinquish power under acceptable terms in which everybody doesn't feel like a loser and we all feel like winners. So ECOWAS has to continue. Obviously, ECOWAS has certain levers or leverage over the Niger. For example, we know that Nigeria supplies electricity to Niger and other countries. So obviously they're going to continue negotiating. They're going to continue putting economic pressure on Niamey, especially with the international partners. It could be the UN and other international organizations that provide this economic relief to the regime. They're going to continue that. I still believe that we don't need to reach a military option, because military option should always be the last. It has to be the last option. But the point is, what I'm a bit worried is that if this military option is taken, we might have a Pyrrhic victory, in the sense where the long-term repercussions could be greater than what we can ever imagine. We shouldn't forget what happened in Libya and other countries. So as we're talking about, there's a big risk of a humanitarian crisis, political crisis, and insecurity with the proliferation of arms, especially as the borders are quite porous. So the ECOWAS group with its international partners have to think long-term about the repercussions. So I think they should continue. They should continue with the diplomatic option, negotiation, and obviously maybe with the different sanctions that would put maybe more leverage on the military junta to rethink its course of action and relinquish power in an acceptable manner to all parties.
I see, Peter. Let's make a bit of a projection. When you look into your crystal ball, based on the analysis that we have made here so far, what are the roadblocks that you envisage, if there be any discussions at all between the junta and ECOWAS, would exist?
Well, for me, what are the roadblocks? The roadblocks would be that the already sanctions that are currently in place, there's biting. If the ECOWAS is not ready to relax it for them, that will become a roadblock to getting them to talk more and open up for further discussion. Because I believe that dialogue is the way to go, because in dialoguing, it will provide a platform for national unity, where different factions within the country can come together to discuss their grievances and, of course, have a better understanding of each other's perspectives, right? And foster a sense of national unity and reconciliation. And so for me, that is what is key. So I'm sure that part of the major roadblocks will be these economic sanctions that are beginning to bite heavily. And I'm sure the juntas are willing to discuss if some of these sanctions are lifted, for them to be able to, move forward as a nation.
And indeed, Peter, it goes back to what you said, that charging Bazoum with high treason will be the leverage that they may need to come to the table for negotiations. Let's see how that plays out in the next few days. My goodness. Let's see how that plays out in the following days. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. Thank you, Dr. Nseke, Dr. Peter Okolo. I appreciate your time here on the program.
Thank you very much.
That'll be all this hour on The Square. Be sure to join us again tomorrow, same time here on News Central TV. I am Kemini Amano.